Hi folks, I'm Bob Sunday from Taos Stove. Thanks for coming by and taking a look at the video today. We're going to do a video on baking, and today we're going to bake a brownie. Brownies are great. I love brownies, so I'm getting pretty good at them. I'm going to talk a little bit about the system that I use to bake. A little bit different than some of the other folks out there in the world use. A lot of folks cook with steam and do all their baking with steam, and they do it in a bag. And then there's other folks that cook totally dry in their pan, and I kind of do both. I use water to initially cook the brownie or other baked objects. It's not just brownies. Biscuits, all of them. I do the same process. The only real difference is the amount of time it takes to cook. So today we're going to show you that. We're going to show you stove we use. We're going to show you the pots and other little apparatus that we use. Okay, first thing, let's talk about stove. The stove is a alcohol wick stove. Uses a fiberglass wick. It has a water jacket to keep the alcohol cool, and a center tub here that holds the alcohol. And we're going to do another video in the future here about this exact stove, and we'll get more precise about the stove and what it does. I will say this stove has a great burn time. Burns about an ounce of alcohol every half hour. So I use 2.5 ounces of alcohol to run this stove. The one thing about wick stoves, and I'll say this now and I'll say it again when I do the video, they always run better and if they're full of alcohol. So when you get real low, if it can't pull the alcohol up the wick, it'll burn your wick up. But if you, say, cook brownie for a half hour and then you make some coffee, or you cook another meal that takes a half hour, you have plenty of alcohol on the first load. You shouldn't have to recharge the stove, though you can if you have to. So let's get into it. Let me show you the pan. I use standard old grease pot. My difference is I've taken the black off the outside of it. I like the shiny pot, and that's about it. Difference, and I've actually modified the top by cutting it down so it's not as tall as it used to be. And also, one thing to know, if you're going to use a grease pot to bake with, is that the plastic knob that comes on the grease pot was only meant to deal with grease coming out of a frying pan and very little heat. So when you get to baking, the amount of heat you generate in this pan gets so hot that it'll actually melt the knob on the grease pot. To remedy that, I take a piece of carbon fiber felt and put it in between the knob and the top, and that keeps that from happening. So when you buy one of my pots, it's going to come retrofitted with the carbon fiber to stop that from happening on the knob. Okay, this is my old oven. As you can see, it's done a lot of baking. And just to bring in the terminology of wick compared to, say, a pressure stove, like a lot of folks, or penny stove, which just works on pressure, this stove burns all its alcohol through that wick. My stove, I do jet. It has a couple jets in this stove, and those jets allow the alcohol to heat up and come out of those jets. And that's what you're going to see right here. That little jet. Once this tub heats up, it's not going to get hot like a regular alcohol stove does, but it's going to get hot enough to vaporize the alcohol. And when it vaporizes the alcohol, it'll come out of those two jets, and those two jets shoot in over top of the wick. And it keeps the flame more centralized right in the center. It doesn't let it spread out. It keeps pushing the heat straight up. So I believe it makes a difference. I also run, unlike a lot of folks do, I run my wicks not high, like this. I run them low. The alcohol doesn't have to climb as high, and the wick will last a lot longer. The wick, and I can't tip this one up, but you'll notice there's a little black spot in the center of this wick. I've used this wick to bake probably at least 50 baked things. Brownies, biscuits, you name it. That is the original wick that went in this stove. I have not changed the wick since the day I built this stove. And I know there's some folks out there who are saying the wicks all burn up in no time. They do if you run them high. Don't run them high. Run them low, you got it. Okay, so we got our grease pot. When I originally started baking with the grease pot, the first, I think it was a brownie actually, the first brownie I ever did, I just had my pan sitting in the little baking pan I'd made, sitting in the bottom. And it didn't take long. That brownie turned into a great big burnt brick. It fried the brownie. I said, well, that's not going to work. So what are we going to do? And I was thinking, okay, I've watched a lot of folks using water and steam. Let's give that a try. I was trying to think of a way. Okay, I got to lift up my pan. I had the strainer pan that comes with the grease pot. Sets in the top. And at that time I was more interested in trying to not burn the brownie. And I took the first one and I modified it by taking a pair of crimping pliers and crimping around the hole outside of the pan, and it made it so that it was small enough that it would drop into the bottom of the pan. But now I didn't have a strainer. I had this. And the first time I baked something, I put it in like this, with the perforated top facing up. And what I found was that this got incredibly hot. Even though there was a ½ inch or more space, it got hot. And it burnt the brownie again. I don't like that. It's kind of, we got something going here, but we got to do something different. Well, start with the most logical thing is just flip it over. So I flipped it over and set it so that the pan would just set on that little rim around the outside. Perfect. Very little contact. That little aluminum edge stays. It gets hot, but it's not hot enough to burn anything. So I started with the system using that. And then as I went along baking other things, brownies, biscuits, chocolate cookies, you name it, I said, man, I'd really like to have that strainer pan back. Because you can take that strainer pan, drop it in there, and you got a pizza pan. This is a pizza oven now. You can drop a pizza dough in there, set it right on top of your stove, light her up, and you can sit there and make pizzas all day. It's great for that. You can also make chocolate chip cookies. Anything that's like cooks on a baking pan, you can pretty much set it right in here and cook it. So I want to save these now. I don't want to use them. I want to send them out to you with the pot because I think it's a very useful item. So I started creating this little light aluminum ring. It's made from a light piece of gauge aluminum, probably 35 gauge. All it does is it just sets in the bottom of the pan the same way this did. Absolutely the same. But now I haven't ruined my strainer. I still have it and I can use it in the system. And as I said, I make cookies, I make pizzas using that. The water that I use is very, very little water. I put enough water in this pot to boil for around 15 minutes, which is funny. It's worked out to be just about 1 fluid ounce of water, which is dripping, so I'm going to pour it in the pan. But about 1 fluid ounce of water. And that will boil. When it comes to a boil, it'll boil for about 15 minutes. And that's what I want it to do to initially cook whatever I'm cooking, brownies, biscuits, whatever. And then after the water boils off, I dry cook, because now it's just a dry heat in the pot. Another good reason for this system, it works with this pot, and remember this, cooking this way doesn't work in a pot that's lined. If you have a beer can pot and it's got a lining in it, and you try to do this, well, you're going to be good for the first 15 minutes when you boil the water. But once the water's gone, you're going to start baking the pan, and the lining in that beer pot is going to burn. So this is something you really have to do in an unlined pot. And that's why, again, the grease pot is a great pot for doing this. It's light, easy to carry, and does a nice job. Now, once I have my pan, my water in it, I have a small aluminum baking pan. And it's made from a broiler pan. Actually, this one's made from a pizza pan. I went out and bought some pizza pans at the grocery store, and I just take them and I lay them out and I fold them, and then so I can pleat them. And when you fold the pleats up, it goes from a flat 12-inch diameter sheet to a nice little 5 3/4-inch diameter baking pan to fit in the grease pot. And you just push those back and you're ready to go. Got some little tabs. Helps you pull it out of the pot when it's hot. Works great. Works great. And we're going to do a video here right after this. It'll be coming along that'll show the making of this. And they're a good DIY, but I also produce them. You can buy them in stacks of 5 from me. I send them to you. I'll send you a small box with them all stacked together. And then you just finish them and put the handles on. So what happens with that is that when we mix our mix, as I said, it just slides down into the pot and it sets on the lifter ring or riser ring. So now we're ready to do our mix, and that's what we're going to do next. Brownies, most brownie mixes that you buy pre-packaged. I just use these pre-packaged things. This is a chocolate chip mix. The brownies rise so much in the pot, you can't cook a whole brownie mix at one time. Now, a thing like the chocolate chip muffin mixes, blueberry muffins, corn muffins, almost all those you can mix the whole bag up and put it in there. But with the brownies, they rise so much, they'll be lifting the pan top off. So I split my brownie mixes in half. And it's still, as you'll see at the end here, it makes a pretty darn nice thick brownie for only using half a mix. A lot of these mixes that I've been using, as I've been learning how to do this, teaching myself and just working things out, you can get these with water only. Around my area, it's hard to find the water onlys. The Walmarts and those places, they don't sell them. They sell all they sell is the one with milk. But hey, guess what? Just put some dry milk in it. You don't need to have fresh milk. You can put dry milk in. You're going to need egg in a lot of these, especially the brownie. Today, I'm going to use a fresh egg. I got it here in the studio. If I was out on the trail, I'm not going to carry a bunch of eggs in my pack. I'm going to carry dried eggs. Again, you just put 1 egg's worth of dry egg in there. It's the same thing. You can make these, and they're cheap. You can get them for a good price. All right, let's mix up a brownie and get it ready to go on the stove, and then we'll be ready to bake. Here we go. All right, now today I'm using as a mixing bowl a very, very expensive object. 2/3 of a Dannon yogurt container. It's super light. It's easy to carry with you. You destroy it, you don't really throw a lot of tears because you destroyed this thing. You just go eat another quart of yogurt and you got yourself another mixing pan. So these things are great. And you can do anything. You can drink water out of it. It's a nice, light little pan. I expect it doesn't even weigh an ounce. I haven't weighed it, but I suspect that's probably pretty close. All right, for today, our mix is going to need an egg, 1/2 of a brownie mix. One thing to remember, depending on your altitude, you got to do different things. We're up here in Taos, New Mexico, and in Taos it's at 7,000 feet. Air's nice and thin, and it takes a little added extra to bake things to make them work. And usually those baking directions will be on the back of your package. It'll say above 3,500 feet, do this, this, this. And that's what we're going to do. What you do is you add about another tablespoon of flour. That's what they call for. That's what we got there. Calls usually for 2 tablespoons of water, but when you're up here in a higher elevation, you bump it to 3 tablespoons. So we got 3 tablespoons. Now the one thing from cooking brownies so much that I've changed is that they call for a 1/4 cup of oil making the brownie. And I've split everything in half, and I was doing these for a period of time, and I was putting 1/8 of a thing of oil in, and then one day I made a major mess up. I just looked at it and said, oh, 1/4, and I put a 1/4 cup of oil in it, another 1/8. So I put as much in a half. Well, that brownie came up a lot nicer than any of the rest of them did. So I've changed that recipe a little bit, and now I put a full 1/4 cup of oil in my mix. And I just think I get a better brownie. It's more cakey. It just seems to open up and be a nicer bake inside. So we're going to mix our mix. And, you know, anything like this that you can take with you on the trail is great because they just don't weigh anything. I like taking things. I mean, obviously I'm taking all these cans and turning them into stoves. I do like to take things and utilize them and recycle them into something else, and these things are great. You can make a mixing bowl out of the bottom end, and you can take the top of the yogurt thing and you can mix epoxy on it. So you can't beat it. It's a great multifunctional container. And today we're using a tool here that we made in the shop here. It's actually a wooden spoon made from pinon, which is a local conifer that grows up here on the mesa. And it's very hard. It's not one of your soft conifers. It's a very hard conifer. Burns real good too. We heat the shop with it. Matter of fact, this came out of the firewood pile. So we'll give it its 50 or whatever so beats that they always say to give it. Get her mixed up, and then we'll put it in the pan. Only thing you got to be a little careful with the yogurt mixing bowls is that they got a little ridge in the bottom, and you just want to make sure that you go around and get all the dry mix out of that little ridge. But except for that, hey, it works great. Alright, so we got our mix there. Next thing we're going to do is take that mix and we're going to put it in our baking pan. Now, a lot of things that I bake through the last number of months when I've been working with this system, I've found that they usually cook, depending on whether it's cornbread, chocolate chip muffins, or brownies. Brownies take a little bit longer, but most things cook anywhere from 20 to 30-35 minutes. Brownies are a 35-minute bake is usually what I find. It takes a little bit longer to dry it out. It has a lot of, with all the oil and the water that's in it, it takes a lot to dry the brownie out. So what I do when I'm cooking is I know that my water is going to boil for darn close to 15 minutes. That's a gimme. And I've done enough of these to know that like if I'm doing a brownie, I'll set my timer for 25 minutes. And then in 25 minutes, I know I've already boiled my water off and I'm dry cooking. And that's about 25. I'll come and check it, put the toothpick in the brownie and see if it comes out clean like you do bake things at home. And then I'll look at the outside perimeter of the baking pan and see what it looks like around the brownie as it's cooking. And it gets to that time gets to where you're doing smell more than anything. Because when it's cooking with the steam, you'll barely smell that brownie cooking. But then as that water is gone and it starts to dry cook, you'll start to smell the brownie. And it'll kind of, you'll feel it build up. And you'll start to smell it more and more. And if it catches on fire and burns, you'll definitely know when it's burning. So you can smell that difference. So it's kind of a cook with steam and cook with your nose at the same time. All right, now the pan, you got little levers to pick it up with. You fold them down so that your top can go on. And you set your pot on there, just like that. And I've already put the water and the alcohol in the stove today just to keep from having to do that. Keep our time down. So let's light our wick right there. Now we got about, I give it a good 20 to 25 minutes before I even look at it. Then that's just experience, and you're going to gain it. The one thing I'm going to say, if you're going to do bake stuff, you can do it out in the woods. Hey, bake a few things in the kitchen first. Go to your kitchen, set up your stove, and sit and bake it. You are going to have to change things even when you go outside. You're going to have wind blowing and that type of thing. Hey, then you're going to want your windscreen around there. So, practice. and find out what the different things that you're making are going to do. This is a great little unit with using the folded baking pan inside to say make biscuits and gravy. Because what you can do is you can cook your biscuit in the baking pan, get it done, take it out, put it over in your cozy, let it set, take the same pot that you still got hot and make the gravy. So you can do it, and while the biscuit's cooling off, you're making the gravy, and then you got biscuits and gravy. So I make a big biscuit here, and this biscuit that's made in this pan is wonderful. You can cut it into about 8 biscuits after it's done. Then you got a good biscuits and gravy breakfast. All right, let's cook. Hi folks, welcome back. Brownie's been cooking for about 25 minutes now. We're going to test it standard old in the kitchen way with the toothpick, and we'll see how it comes out. It came out pretty nice and clean. Now that's one way I check it. The other way is to kind of look around the side of the brownie itself, and again, as I said earlier, smelling it. Right now I can still barely smell the brownie cooking, so my tendency is to want to make it a little bit drier. Alright, well, at about 25 minutes, it still needed a little bit more cooking. We're at about 30 minutes now, and I think it's time to take it out. My usual process when I take these things out is to put them in a cozy for a while and kind of let them cool down slowly and also cook a little bit more, and I think it helps it. So that's what we're going to do. I got a cozy here that I make, and I use single wall Reflectex, but I double it. So my cozies are made from 2 layers, and they're glued together and then assembled into the cozy. And what I do is blow out this flame, which is what we're going to do first. Then you can lift your little tabs, and they're going to be a little warm. You can let it sit there for a few minutes if you want to, and just let it get cool. I got these old tough woodworking fingers here, and usually I can pick it up pretty easily. One thing I do when I'm cooking and I'm baking and I'm getting ready to set it in the cozy, these cozies with this kind of plastic foil finish have a tendency to stick to really hot pans. A lot of times you're cooking soup and things like that, it's not as hot. You really get the pan hot when you're doing baking in it. So I usually line the bottom of my cozies with a piece of regular aluminum foil, but also when I'm not using it, I will take the strainer pan that I was using and I'll flip it upside down inside my cozy, and it'll hold my pot up off the bottom, and then you don't have those kind of problems. So let's take our pan, let's set her in the cozy, just like that. We don't even need the pot. You can just take the baking pan and set it right in the cozy, put the top on, and it looks pretty good right there. It's even pulled away from the pan a bit, so it probably won't even have a problem sliding it out. So let's give that 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll be back, and we'll take this brownie and we'll cut it, take a look at the inside, and we'll do a taste test. That's the best part. So we'll be back. Thanks a lot. Hey, welcome back, folks. It's time to take a look at this brownie that we cooked, see how things came out. Give it about 10 minutes and it cools off to the point where you can easily take it out by hand. That's pretty good looking there. Not burnt too bad. No, there's hardly any burning on that at all. It feels great. And there we go. A nice chocolate brownie. There we go. Now, there's only one thing left in this whole film to do, is that we need to check the brownie by cutting it open and take a look at it. So that's what we're going to do next. That's the nice thing about being the baker. You get the first piece of brownie. Right. Well, there we go, steaming. Look at that. That's cooked pretty nice inside. It's not soggy, and it's got a nice dry cook to it. Not burnt, but just enough around it, solid enough to hold on. I guess the test is we're going to have to take a bite. Melt in your mouth good. I think that would do fine out in the woods on a camping trip. Thanks a lot for watching the video today. We hope to be doing a lot more for you. Got any comments? Helpful hints? Hey, cooking hints. I'll take them. Give me an email. Thank you very much. And hope to see you back to look at some other videos.